Leap to Unicorn with IDFC First Bank in association with Moneycontrol and CNBC TV 18.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tushar Vadira, and I welcome you all today on this wonderful afternoon for the session of Leap to Unicorn, powered by IDFC First Bank in association with Moneycontrol.com and CNBC TV 18. So, we are here to talk about the wonderful topic of fertile ecosystem for startups, India. And, I'm very, very excited to, host this session today for two reasons. One, today being 16th of January, our respective Prime Minister Narendra Modi last year, talked about startup ecosystem, and he inaugurated this day as National Startup Day. So, to talk about the startup ecosystem topic on this day is a privilege for me. So, thank you so much. And the second reason is that the panel, what we have today, we have four panel members with us, and all four are, different stakeholders which a startup ecosystem could have. We have representations from government authorities. We have representation from investment ecosystem, startups, and corporate enablers. So, very, very glad, and a warm welcome to all of you all for this topic today. Just a brief about Leap to Unicorn. It's a wonderful opportunity for all the early stage startups out here to take leverage the opportunity provided by the ecosystem, all the stakeholders with multiple investors, mentors from different unicorn funds, many founders coming together to support your early stage ventures and scale it to the next level. We would also share the screen on screen the link to apply for the startups. Do take part in it, do register for it while we discuss about this topic today. So, just to start with a brief about Head Start Network, which has been one of the leading stakeholder in the startup ecosystem, working at grassroots level for almost 15 years till now, and enabling the early stage startups. Today, when we look back, we see that we have over 100 unicorns who have been a part of the startup ecosystem. And now, when we begin 2023 on a positive note, we are expecting many more such startups to join the ranks in the coming decades and enable empower the Indian economy. So today we are here to take a deep dive and understand how this Indian startup ecosystem has been redesigned for the startups to flourish further, how the different stakeholders have come together to create this viable platform, this beautiful ecosystem for the early stage startups to flourish and make their impact in the ecosystem. So today I'll start with a quick introduction about our first speaker with us, respected Ramanan Ramanathan sir, who has been the former mission director of Atal Innovation Mission. He has also been the additional secretary at Niti Aayog for many years, and one of the torchbearers, enabling multiple policies at government level to support the startups. As per my knowledge, he has enabled over 10,000 plus Atal Tinkering Labs at school level, almost 75 plus Atal Incubation Centers, supporting over thousands of startups across the country, many of them women-led startups. He has also been the managing director and CEO of CMC Limited, and so he also has that corporate background. So I would request Ramanan sir to share some lights on how he has seen this Indian startup ecosystem grow over the last 10 years.
Thank you, Tushar, for that introduction and wonderful opportunity to share a few thoughts on this very important occasion, which is the National Startup Day, as has been announced by the Prime Minister last year. I think India is on the threshold of a new era where startups are going to play a very, very important role in the socio-economic progress of our country. And why I say that is because not only the numbers bear it out. I mean, we have today more than 88,000 startups that has been registered on DPIIT. You also have more than 100 plus unicorns. But I think the more important thing is not these numbers, but the fact that there is a very, very fertile ecosystem of innovation, a vibrant ecosystem of innovation that has been set up across the country, spanning not just the industry, but also universities and going down at a school level. And that is, I think, what is the fantastic achievement over the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years, in which we have grown remarkably in the startup ecosystem. In fact, as everybody is aware, we are among the third largest startup ecosystems of the world. But I think the important thing for a startup is today there is a convergence in India, and that's a convergence of demographic dividend that we all enjoy, being one of the youngest populations of the world. And so you have a youthful energy coursing through the nation that can be harnessed for the purposes of startup creation and entrepreneurial drives. The second is, of course, the fact that we are a part of a rising economy, and you need a fast, vibrant, rising economy. We have been growing at 6 to 8% every year, and unless you have that, you will not be able to foster startups or be able to support them where very crucial interventions are required. Especially, you talked about angel startups. How do you support that? Unless you have a growing economy, it's difficult to support that. And the third is, of course, we are living in a world of rapidly changing technology, which has become accessible, affordable, available, and advanced. And this is taking away the domain of innovation from large organizations to the individual. And when an individual is empowered with available tools for reshaping the world, for solving problems that have not been solved before, or for solving problems which have been suboptimally solved, you have a tremendous combination that is providing this fertile ecosystem. Now, in the last 5-6 years, I've been part of the government of India as a part of Atal Innovation Mission. And what I have been seeing at close quarters is not just Atal Innovation Mission, but also the various other departments, like Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology, and various other ministries like Defense and Agriculture and so on, who have got involved in the entire system to be able to start contributing and recognizing that innovation, entrepreneurship, startups are going to be key for transformation of this country in their various departments, whether it be Ministry of Transportation, the infrastructure that is being set up, the agriculture where agri-tech can play a very important role. So they have all acquired a certain dimension of visibility and importance within the government, which is therefore translating into active support, not just financial support, but mentoring support and soliciting industry to be part of this entire exercise. And therefore, the vision that the Honorable Prime Minister has been talking about, an Atmanirbhar Bharat, where you have the 5 pillars on which Atmanirbhar Bharat stands: the pillar of demographic dividend, the pillar of social economic change that is required in this country, very large country with more than 650,000 villages and more than 8,000 small towns and cities and only 8 tier 1 cities. So you need the pillar of infrastructure to be able to create it, to be able to be created in this environment, so that you can have 8,000 hubs of innovation and job creation. And that is being facilitated through incubators being set up in universities, tinkering labs being set up in schools, inducting a problem-solving, innovative mindset and culture in our young people. And that is so very important if you want to create the entrepreneurs of the future. So, and then there is this great awareness of sustainability and climate change and sustainable development goals that the G20 has espoused as one family, one earth, and one future. I think this whole reverberates very well with not just commercially driven innovation, but also social innovation that's going to have a tremendous positive impact. So all in all, in a nutshell, to conclude at this point in time, is that we really have a very vibrant ecosystem of innovation being set up, and it is up to our young people to be able to capitalize on it and build on it.
Thank you so much, sir, for very quickly outlining all the different angles to the startup ecosystem in India. It's a very, very important opportunity for all the startups. And the another speaker whom we have with us today is Mr. Siddharth Pai, founding partner of 314 Capital. So when we talk about startups, it's very, very important to take into consideration the investors' point of view, how they see the Indian startup ecosystem. What according to you, Siddharth, so just we'll start with a quick introduction about Siddharth as well. So he has helped close over 120 plus funding rounds and investment into 35 different funds across private equity and public markets. 314 Capital manages a corpus of over $100 million and a portfolio over 50 plus startups. So that's massive, Siddharth. Tell us about your experience over the last few years, about the startup ecosystem of India.
Thanks a lot, Tushar. Actually, Triumph Capital now manages over $300 million right about now. So I just want to actually correct that. We've actually grown in lockstep with the startup ecosystem itself. So all the way back from 2016 is when we actually started. That was just around the time when startups were actually entering the popular vernacular and everything going forward. And we have the unique distinction of actually launching a fund every single year from 2016 all the way to about 2022 as of now. So there's been a tremendous journey as part of that itself. And from our side, I think the investors have actually been seeing investors the world over have actually been seeing India as India actually coming onto its own as an engine of global growth, not just for regional growth that happens in India itself. And you look at the startup ecosystem in particular, a large number of them are actually seeing the Indian startup ecosystem as the only bright spot of what has been a particularly horrendous year over 2022 itself. We've actually seen extremely large companies the world over end up actually crashing. We've seen a massive contraction that's happened. But we look at the startup ecosystem in 2022 itself, outside of restructuring and layoffs that were actually needed because of the large level of overinvestment in the capabilities and capacities in 2021, we've actually seen the Indian startup ecosystem actually hold itself in very, very good ground as part of that. And if you look at it as well, Tushar, there are very few countries in the world that actually have about a 1 billion population that's actually coming online itself. India's internet penetration is about 800 million right now. We've seen the average cost of a smartphone actually come down to about $100 on average itself. If you actually go across the entire country, you've seen a population that's highly sophisticated in terms of transacting online. We've actually seen the seeds of a very strong ecosystem actually been laid all the way from 2016 onwards, all the way to 2022, which is how India has actually given birth to 100 unicorns of the size and scale that we've actually seen as of now. There's actually a very popular saying that we have: if the Valley can actually build for the first 1 billion people coming online, then afterwards India alone can actually build for the next 6 billion people that are coming online itself. Because it's actually going to be Indian companies and Indian talent, for that matter, that can actually end up solving the problems of the generations and billions of people who are slowly looking to come onto the internet and become part of the entire global village itself. And what we've actually seen, the capital efficiency that Indian startups actually have put them a leg above the rest. In the US, for that matter, an average seed round is about anywhere between about $10 to $12 million as of now. Whereas you look at India, a good seed round actually ends up being anywhere between $2 to $3 million itself. A dollar over here can actually go far further than what we actually seen a dollar actually go anywhere else. And the rich catchment area of engineers that we actually have and the pipeline of talent that we have actually holds India in very, very good stead. A surprising fact that you must actually know is that Indian talent actually ends up powering global innovation. 1/3 of all the founders in the US are either Indian or Indian origin by themselves. We're actually seeing the highest quantum of talent that's actually coming to AI, that's actually coming to silicon, that's actually coming to cutting edge, for that matter, actually graduating from India and from Indian colleges itself. I think one thing India did really well is to actually create a very strong framework of policies, such as the Startup India program, such as the Atal Innovation Mission, and the like, that could actually enable Indians to actually end up realizing their entrepreneurial ambitions. Such that in order for them to become entrepreneurs, they no longer have to move to the US or Singapore for that matter, and they can actually do that from India itself. We've actually seen the time taken to incorporate a company reduce from close to a month to about a single day. And a number of compliances, so your PAN, your TAN, and everything for that matter, actually gets shoehorned into one itself. And the MCA, as well as government officials, are actually going above and beyond to make sure that a deeper level of integration ends up actually happening. Actually seen the ease of doing business also improve tremendously when we've actually seen that happen over the last 6 years itself. A large number of the forms that were manual have now actually become automatic. We've actually seen the compliance burden actually end up reducing to a very, very large extent. I think the convergence of all this has seen India actually become the third largest ecosystem in the entire world, and one of the only large ecosystem of its size that's actually continuing to grow as we've seen. 2021 was a marquee year in the Indian startup space. Indian startups actually raised about $42 billion of capital, and we've actually seen that reduce to about $28 billion right about now. And this $28 billion in 2022, which was headlined with the fact that it was the Russia-Crimea war is actually happening. We actually seen inflation actually increase to a large extent. We've seen the low interest rate environment that actually punctuated the previous decade actually give way to a high interest rate environment that we're seeing right now. And despite this, Indian startups actually did far better in 2022 than they've actually done in 2020, than in 2019, or any years that have actually preceded that. I'm actually excluding 2021 as there was a large amount of stuff that happened because of macro stuff as well as the strength of the Indian ecosystem. We've actually seen marquee founders, and one of the signs, Tushar, I think that of how investors view Indian startups, despite 2022 being a particularly bad year for Indian startups to end up raising, we've actually seen India-focused fund managers actually raise the highest quantum of capital in their entire operating history to actually deploy exclusively into Indian startups itself. Be it the marquee investors you can think of, larger hedge funds, fund of funds. We've seen fund managers and everyone as well. Everyone's actually making a beeline to India right now and to Indian innovation. I truly believe that Indian innovation can actually end up punctuating and making this entire decade us, which is why the ecosystem actually becomes powerful, and which is why even initiatives such as Leap to Unicorn, for that matter, are important to socialize the term of an entrepreneur, start creating greater dialogue within the industry, and start creating an ecosystem that can truly compound and generate value for everyone.
Great, Siddharth. Thank you so much. I think being a startup founder myself, this very, very impressive to see the growth of the Indian startup ecosystem over the last decade, and the different aspects you mentioned about the future on how more unicorns and more even better policies which the government is doing would help the early stage startup in the near future. So when we talk about startups, it is very, very important to take the perspective from a startup founder as well. So I would love to introduce Arun Vinayak to our panel today. He's the co-founder of Exponent Energy, and he started with his career with corporates, and then right now trying to create a mark in the EV space, revolutionizing with their 15 minutes full charge technology with e-pack and e-pump technologies. So welcome, Arun, to the panel today. Would love to take your views on your experience with the Indian startup ecosystem. You're working in a technology in a space which is very, very new to India. How have you've been benefited, or what are the different aspects which you encountered in growing your startup and your fundraise as a part of this ecosystem?
Hey, thank you, Tushar. Thanks for having me. I think been in the startup space for close to a decade now, and I think there's been a tectonic shift in what startups are and what they mean for India. Fundamentally, for three reasons. A, the talent pools, right? I think in 2010, 2011, joining a startup or starting up was still looked upon quite curiously. The smartest people, the best talent in India, either wanted to go abroad and build. They either wanted to join a bank or join the consultancies, right? That's changed. Today, the best talent in India wants to start up, wants to stay in India, build in India, and or wants to join a startup in a very early stage or mid stage. That's everything, right? I mean, you can talk about that. When you talk about startups, you talk about funding, you talk about revenues, etc. But at the end of the day, companies are a bunch of people hustling away. And the quality of people who want to join startups and build in India, that has fundamentally shifted. And I think that's one of the biggest success factors that will enable the next 10 years or next 20 years in India, right? The second big tectonic shift that we've seen is the audacity of the problem, right? I think 2010, 2011. A lot of these startups in India were still Uber for X in India, Amazon for X in India. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're not hard. They weren't hard problems. They were really important problems. They were the pioneers of startups in India. A lot of things that they've done have now made it easier for startups today, like us, to sort of reap those benefits, right? They were hard problems. But at the end of the day, I think what's changed today is both founders and investors, they've all realized that India is different. India is unique. You need to build technology in a very different way. You need to build for consumers in a very different way in India, right? So there's no more of pressure to say, hey, listen, this works in the rest of the world. I'm going to now try and copy that here. I think one of the biggest questions that we get asked all the time is, hey, Arun, 15-minute charging is great. Who else does it in the world? And a number of times I've had to explain that, no one else in the world really is trying to do this because they don't need it. India is different. We have to build tech differently in India for India. The consumers are different. The price points are different. And that's started off late, right? There's no more a need to say this is already validated in the rest of the world. And I think the fact that investors are feeling audacious enough to take bets in truly original ideas, that they have startup founders truly thinking big, that's changed last few years. And I think, for example, fintech is one place that India has proven that we can take lead. We've built things very differently. UPI, for example, is sort of the poster child of what India can do when it comes to taking lead. But I think we need to replicate that in every other sector. And the third thing is, I think, the inclination to go deep tech, right? At the end of the day, if India wants to lead, there's only so much value that comes in marketplaces and services. Right? At the end of the day, you have to build real tech at the ground level, and you now have companies building tech that doesn't exist in the rest of the world. You have multiple Indian startups launching rockets. So I think in the next 10 years, next 20 years, India's got to design in India, and that's already starting to happen, especially the last few years. We speak about make in India, but I think India's been making in India for a long time, right? I think it's about time we design in India, we own IP in India, and we own the tech in India. And I think the government framework to enable innovation in multiple sectors, like what Mr. Ramanathan said, has really spun off a whole bunch of ideas, a whole bunch of innovation in every segment that we can think of, from agri-tech to space tech, right? And of course, the investor ecosystem that truly believes in local talent, in Indian talent, building for India, for the world, I think that further accelerates how quickly we are innovating as a country. And I think for all three reasons, right? I think India is poised to sort of win the next 20 years when it comes to sort of tech that we build in India and for the world.
Thank you so much, Arun. Feeling very energetic, listening to this views from a startup's point of view, and thanks a lot to the government and the investor and other stakeholders what we have, in creating this fertile ground. So Arun also mentioned about fintech, and that brings me to Bhavesh Jatania, who is the next speaker. He's the head of startup banking at IDFC First Bank, a chartered accountant and a CIMA topper, with over 25 years of leadership experience in BFSI and technology space. So Bhavesh, first of all, thank you so much for the Leap to Unicorn opportunity for all the early stage startups out here. On their behalf, I would like to, congratulate and thank you for this opportunity. And I would request all the early stage startups who are on the call to definitely check out about the Leap to Unicorn program, which is a massive opportunity with over 20 plus investment partners, multiple ecosystem partners, and many state startup cells. It's a great platform for mentoring, networking, fundraising, definitely with industry stalwarts. So you should definitely apply for it. And Bhavesh, with this note, would like to take your views on the Indian ecosystem and how IDFC First Bank is enabling it.
Sure. Thank you, Tushar. Thank you so much, and a very happy startup day to you and the fellow panelists and the viewers here. Right. It's been an absolute privilege to organize this, right, and be part of an initiative like this, right, to help startups at every stage, especially at an early stage, though, right. What I would do in my quick introduction essentially would cover a brief about how do we see the space wearing the bank is head, and the challenges that we see in the space when this particular industry addresses the needs of startups, right, and their approach in turn. So I will kind of touch upon quickly a couple of challenges that we saw there and how are we trying to make a difference there, right? So quickly, obviously, as my fellow panelists have already covered on the ecosystem side, we see a great opportunity not just for the bank, but for the country as a whole, right? And we see this startup being the growth engine for the country, right? Which would eventually take us to the 5 trillion. I know currently the GDP contribution of startups is about 2.5-3%, right? But I'm sure over the period of time it will grow, right? And we see this leading essentially the growth for the country, taking us to $5 trillion and beyond, right, in terms of growth. Now, when we looked at this space, obviously, and wearing the banker's hat, right, we looked around the space and said, how as a bank, first of all, how do bankers approach this at this point in time? And we saw that many areas where possibly we could improve on, right? One of them being to start off with the structure, right? And we know traditional banking structures are essentially designed around traditional organizations, right? And traditional organizations typically live in that life stage for a very, very long time, from an early stage to a growth stage to a late stage, as we call it, right? And in a traditional business balance, you would call it a small enterprise, a medium enterprise, and large enterprise, right, so to speak. Okay, and the banking structures are created around to address the needs of organizations in their life stages, right? and assuming that organizations would remain in the life stage for a very long time, and therefore they have islands created to service the needs, and products and services are essentially kept on those islands for those startups to avail, right, or the other enterprises to avail, right. We know these islands have been created, and these islands were created for a reason, but when we look at startups move across the life stages really, really quickly, unlike traditional organizations. And to meet the needs of these startups, the island-based structures, right, do not work, because it's very difficult from an enterprise when it comes in as a customer to a bank, right, to move from one island to another, right, for the very reason that these islands are large enough, right, and you don't move unless there is absolute need and the vested interest that comes in right there. We looked at this particular issue, and we looked at some of the global examples also around this, and we said, how can we therefore, instead of creating a vertical that focuses on bank, right, create a horizontal? So we don't just offer products and services for these startups across their life stages through single interface, right, but we also offer bank as a service to some of these startups, right, and both are of importance to the startups, therefore, right, and so that's what we tried doing when we looked at the structure, and what I would do going forward, if given an opportunity to speak about what did we do or what are we doing on other couple of fronts as well. And I see challenges around the products, right, because typically the products which are offered by banks are designed for small and medium enterprises and then customized for startups, right. So I would speak more about that as we go along. I would also speak about our overall approach. And when we speak about overall approach, while we bank, so we bring to the table obviously the products and services that a bank offers, but our objective is not to remain just a banking partner or a banking player, so to speak, in the entire game, right? We want to be a business partner, so to speak, right? A catalyst, a springboard that startups can use essentially to move to the next life stage, right? And that's how we see our role in this ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavesh, and we really look forward to the details, discussing the details which you just mentioned to me. And once again, extremely delighted to host the panel today. All four different stakeholders of the Indian startup ecosystem on a screen. And I would love to start my first question. I will also encourage the participants to pose their questions if they have any to any one of them. And my first question goes to Ramanan sir. You have seen the startup ecosystem evolve since its very early days, I think, and over a decade now. Fast forward to 2023, we are beginning a new year. We've already seen over 100 unicorns. What would be the headline you would wish to see in 2023? What is your wish?
Well, if you ask me what would be my wish, I would say that we should leap in the global innovation index from a position of 41 right now to under 25. So we should be among the top 25 innovation index ranked organizations in the world. And the reason I say that is when you are able to leap across that, you're actually not only just creating an innovation ecosystem that is growing by leaps and bounds, and I'm sure that will result in us becoming the second largest startup ecosystem in the world automatically, but also the Global Innovation Index measures on a lot of parameters: the impact of innovation on the social structure, the economic structure, the quality of living, livelihoods, the addressing of various challenges that are there in our aspirational districts, for example. So it's a very holistic approach that we need to have towards innovation. That will automatically create, from 100, unicorns may go up to 200 or whatever. But I think if we are able to leap in the Global Innovation Index to a position of 25, and then within the next 5 years, leap to a position of 10, I think we'd have done a remarkable job.
Sir, that's a very, very motivating as well as challenging opportunity for all of us. And the ecosystem will definitely, the startups will definitely innovate as much as possible to make your wish come true this year. So Bhavesh, this brings me to the question from a corporate point of view. corporates play a very important role to support startup. We are talking about innovation. How can startups today exploit this opportunity to scale further, make a better pitch? What are the different avenues available for the startup? Definitely, there are multiple boot camps and mentorship avenues. But currently, what is the need of the hour for us?
Sure. So I just go back and kind of reiterate what I said earlier, right? We don't see our role just as a banking partner, so to speak. We want to be the catalyst here, and I know we want to contribute to this entire ecosystem. And when we looked at this ecosystem, obviously there were challenges that existed in the ecosystem. Not that others haven't tried earlier, but obviously it's a large ecosystem, so everybody can contribute there, right? And we looked at the space and said, now obviously, can we create a platform? Can we provide a platform to the startups, especially at an early stage, where people can come and show their stories, show their ideas, can get selfless guidance, right? And we've seen a lot of these guys, we've seen the mortality being higher in the early stage, not just from a funding perspective, right, but also from a perspective that they are not guided appropriately at this point in time. So while startups come in with good ideas to solve problems and all, they need help around building businesses around those ideas and all, right? And we've seen our guidance in this regard actually helps, right? So we wanted to create essentially a platform where we could possibly have these startups come in, showcase their stories, speak to people who can help them in turn, right? Get connected with people who can possibly potentially give them funds essentially to grow their businesses, right? And therefore we said, let's create a platform which helps them, and which is where the Leap Unicorn came into being there, right? Today, apart from many other platforms, and I'm not saying we're the only ones, but this is possibly the only platform which provides the largest access to the startups. We're talking about some 4,000 odd startups, 500, a quote about 400 to 500 startups, being able to present their ideas to investors through this particular platform, right? And so platforms like this, we said we want to go beyond. We wanted to go beyond the banking space and be the business partners, be a navigator, so to speak, for the startups in their journey to success, right? And this is exactly what we're trying to do here through this particular platform.
Great, thank you, Bhavesh. So, we talked about innovation, we talked about different opportunities. Siddharth, the question which comes to my mind is from a global interest point of view. We talked about Indian startup ecosystem being the third largest ecosystem. India is a very fast-growing major economy, just projected to achieve over $5 trillion in GDP in the next couple of years. What is the global investors' mindset or interest in India? Tell us more about it.
That's actually a fantastic question, Tushar. I also want to add that when India becomes a $5 trillion economy, the innovation economy and startups are actually expected to contribute at least $1 trillion to that. So very, very high benchmark has actually been set by the Prime Minister as a challenge to the entire startup nation. And as Arun also mentioned, we've actually seen startup innovation actually percolate into almost every area of life. We've actually seen them actually go into space, seen them go into fast charging. I'm fairly certain that now silicon is also something we'll end up seeing. Bangalore has the highest concentration of silicon designers in the entire world, for that matter. So the innate talent base actually does exist. And from global investors also, they've been looking at India very, very intently, or since we actually opened up during liberalization itself. And India has actually gone through several ways of innovation. Once you actually take a look at it, we of course saw the dot-com wave that actually happened. Then after that, we first saw the pharma wave that happened. Then we saw the dot-com wave that happened. Then we saw the telecom boom that ended up happening. And for the last decade onward, we've actually seen digital and startups play a very, very important role throughout this entire journey itself. And what investors actually end up loving is the fact that India being a fairly young nation, as part of that, with a very highly competent talent base that exists, and has also crossed $2,000 in terms of their per capita income on a PPP basis. That actually signals a shift from spending in terms of subsistence and spending in terms of discretionary services. We've actually seen the rise of several unicorns such as Licious, which actually caters to several parts of the market, seen rights of brands like Boat, brands like Noise, etc., which actually end up catering to the Indian market itself in a manner that the Indian market actually ends up understanding. So we've seen the unlocking of consumer spending. We're seeing a very, very young average age of the people who are there. We're seeing the number of people entering the workforce actually end up increasing, and we don't have the kind of inverted pyramid problem that China actually does. For that matter, China, as you know, ever since they had the one child per family. Why? You see in India and the family unit and everything that's actually there. For that matter, problems with inflation. China is just actually coming out of COVID and just trying to kickstart the entire economy and everything that's right about now. Europe things are looking extremely bad in Europe. Latin America is also fighting with inflation to a large extent. The Middle East is slowly rising. As part of that, Japan, of course, has its own set of issues. Southeast Asia actually ends up fitting in Uttar Pradesh itself. So we've actually seen that India is one of the last markets, like I said, that actually has a $1 billion plus population and has the right set of factors for them to actually end up capitalizing upon that and actually taking it forward. I think one of the things that investors in India would also like to end up seeing is a few things. One is in terms of stability of policy, making sure this artificial discrimination between listed shares and unlisted shares, for example, needs to actually go away. In India, a large amount of investments into startups, as you know, actually go into new asset creation. They actually go into generating employment, they go into research and development, they go into hiring new people, they go into expansion for that matter. But despite this and the high level of risk that it entails, the taxes on capital gains from the exit of startups is actually taxed at twice the rate that you would from the listed market. But the listed market is primarily a secondary market where shares actually get transferred from one investor to another. So this solving that particular distortion will go a long way in actually leveling the entire playing field. That's one. Number two, we actually require just stability in terms of policy. They've done a large amount of work to ensure that liberalizations actually come in. I think the final few steps are actually needed to actually give credence to the intent and make sure that intent translates to action for that matter is something that the investors are actually looking at. But I think we've actually seen, despite the global downturn, India still actually remains a very strong hope for large them. In fact, one of the largest investors in the startup ecosystem also is actually telling all his investors that in the next fund, they actually end up leading for that matter. The Indian SaaS ecosystem and Indian startups will actually play a very, very strong role over there itself. And we actually seen these sort of benchmarks actually come in. So it's a great time for them to actually end up capitalizing and actually building upon this.
Great. So the future looks promising. You talked about multiple sectors here, Siddharth, and we have expert from EV sector here, Arun. So we talked about innovation. We talked about the global investor interest. Tell us more about the EV sector. It looks promising, but what does the future look like? From a startup point of view, and also tell us if any of the startups in our audience would like to collaborate with Exponent Energy. What are the different ways to explore?
No, absolutely. I think EV is one of the spaces where I think India will lead. I think last time vehicles were built, the combustion vehicles were built, India wasn't even a free country, right? So we've always played the catch-up game when it comes to combustion vehicle technology. But when it comes to EV, there's a global reset in learning, right? There's a lot more dependence on electronics, a lot more need for software. And India has got one of the largest markets to locally fund this innovation. So been in the EV space for with Ather before and now with Exponent. So seeing how EVs have evolved, I think previously, 2013, 2014, not many people believe that EVs are better. Today, everyone believes that EVs are fantastic in every segment. They drive faster, they've got a lot more torque. What's not to love about an EV? The only problem was around charge time, was around battery life, and that's fundamentally the final piece that we're sort of trying to plug. Our job as at Exponent is simplify energy. So we charge vehicles in 15 minutes, flat, under 15 minutes, 0 to 100%. We also give a 3,000 cycle warranty while doing this. So this sort of tech does not exist anywhere else in the world. The reason we build this in India is because India needs it. The need inspires innovation. India can't afford large batteries. A lot of segments in India don't have parking at home, right? A lot of India parks on the roads. So the concept of I will own a 400-kilometer range battery, park at home and charge at home, that philosophy doesn't work. That's a US or Europe market. So again, this is one of the classic cases of realizing that India is different. We have to build tech very differently for the Indian use case. So that's sort of why Exponent exists. And if any startup out there is building anything in the EV space, maybe charging networks, maybe a vehicle, we're more than happy to help integrate our technology and sort of scale that up. And startups and large companies alike, we work with both. But also happy to always talk and chat about hardware and sort of help in any way I can personally help when it comes to hardware innovation in India.
Absolutely, and this is what the topic is, right? Creating a fertile ecosystem. So a startup collaborating with other startup, and we building together, creating innovation, designing in India, not just making in India. Which again brings me to the policymakers here. So Ramanand sir, how have different enablers? How have you seen the different enablers come together in the last couple of years? Creating a very viable platform for growth. What does the future look like? How do you see the ecosystem to further evolve over the coming years?
Yeah, Tushar, I think the story of Indian innovation, I would say, is really the story of enablers coming into play and coming into focus in a very systematic manner. And that's what has resulted in where we are right now. And that's what improving on that is going to take us into the future. So let me start off, the whole thing of innovation starts with, do you have an innovative mindset, and can you create an innovative mindset, and do you have a problem solving mindset? And that is being done at the school level. So this one great enabler through tinkering labs, which has now caught on. You don't need an Atal tinkering labs. Every school is setting up a tinkering lab of its own, because they have realized that you need to create a problem solving innovative culture in our young students. And there are other school students who are starting to do innovations, and you are able to empower them with tools and technology which is affordable and accessible. So that is one big enabler at the school level. And also, if you look at government policies like NEP 2020 and the revisions to that, is all going towards how do you move away from this rote learning mindset that all of us had into a problem solving innovative mindset. So that is number one. Number two is now your students have to be encouraged into innovation, provoked into problem solving, problem identification, and so on. And there are many players coming into the picture now. It is, incubators are coming into the picture, but also NGO organizations are now taking it up in a very big way. So civil organizations are seeing how they can ensure not just the innovation, but also the enabling infrastructure, gender parity. How do you encourage girl empowerment and the girl child to innovate? How do you encourage women entrepreneurship? All of these are also coming into play, and that becomes very important because the focus on diversity, inclusivity, as well as economic financing of all of these initiatives at a school level has come into play. And NEP 2020 focuses on that. It also says that it's very important for you to move away from just academic degree sort of courses to vocational training and vocational skill development, job enabling training, and therefore the ministries of skill development and higher education have now started playing an emphasis on how do you leverage tools and technology to create 21st century ready, job ready, future job ready people. And that includes soft skills, design skills, critical thinking skills, communication skills, collaboration skills. And these are all coming to fore, which we never experienced when I was studying in school and so on. It was always get good marks and go to the next grade and so on and so forth. The third is the enabler at the university level for creating incubators and supporting incubators, and thereby supporting many startups during the valley of death that they experience because of lack of research support or lack of technology support or lack of seed funding support. And Startup India and so on have come up with a very good mechanism of not only ensuring that young startups who have a great idea, and through the hackathons, through the challenges, through the mobility challenge that I just now inaugurated in one of the schools, MIT ADT school today, they're all now getting into areas which are relevant, like how Arun was saying, this is a very relevant area, and where it's a level playing field for all of us. So these incubators and all of these are enabling. But I think the other bigger thing that we are seeing now is the emphasis on district level innovation and village level innovation. We have 650,000 villages, and I said we have 8,000 small towns and cities. If you want to create them as active hubs of innovation, we need to ensure that there are, this whole incubation system. We have close to about, from last report, 700 incubators. But do we have a hub and spoke arrangement by which first the benefit of innovation goes to the rural areas, tier 2, tier 3 cities, and second, can we create them as hubs of local job creation and local community innovation? And I think that already Atal Innovation Mission has set up around 20 community innovation centers in tier 2, tier 3 cities. But I think the opportunity and the need is, can we have an innovation center or innovation hub in every district? 715 districts are there. That is going to spur innovation and spur startups to a completely different level and address the various opportunities that we have. I'm never tired of saying India is a country of billion people with a million challenges. But these million challenges are million startup opportunities. And that is what all the enabling policies, as well as the interventions being done at a research level, at an educational level, at a university level, and industry coming together. One important point I want to point out is during the COVID-19 crisis, as has been pointed out, it's been a great year for unicorns to spring up. But I had the opportunity to look into how do we tackle the COVID-19 crisis through innovation. And we solicited a call for startups across the country, or companies across the country, not just startups, anyone who had a preventive, assistive, or a curative solution for addressing COVID-19 problems was invited. And what we found, 1,500 startups pivoted their existing solutions, whatever they had, into COVID-19 assistive, preventive, or some even curative solution. And that showed that the startup era in India has really leapt up into action. And at that time, we also saw industry coming together to support this. And I think for industry, it was a wake-up call that here is this tremendous talent, here is this tremendous capability, and if we are not there to support them, it is ours to lose. And so I think the awareness in the industry that they have to support startup innovation and internalize it into their own workings has become very, very strong. And that is going to augur us well for the future. And today is a great example. Tata 1mg became a unicorn, and that was acquired by Tata Digital. And they had looked at the power of a startup in the pharma area and said, this is something that we should be in. So a large behemoth, a corporate organization, which I have been part of, but now they are very actively looking at startups of how we can support them, whether it is a big basket or all the others.
Thank you so much. I was just in the afterthought. When you talked about the different challenges, 1 million different challenges for 1 million population, and you talked about the different different villages and different ways of handling the challenges across the country. And I was just thinking that to enable such a large ecosystem, we need more enablers, right? Just the government may not be able to do it themselves. So which brings me to Bhavesh, being an enabler. How does one innovate to be an enabler for startups? So funding as an enabler is one thing, but how to extract more value at inception. Very, very important for all of the startups to understand from this angle.
Sure. Tushar, let me quickly give you the example of financial services. And I'm not getting into the past as to how financial products and services were created and delivered, but we see the next generation of financial services, which will have to be built, products will have to be built, and services to be delivered, will be built essentially on the digital infrastructure which is getting created at this point in time. And thanks to the government and its policies, right, they've been working on each of these pillars as we speak it. And there are 5 pillars that we're talking about here, right? The digital identity that we speak, right? Digital identities, thanks to the Aadhaar stack today, we have that done, right? Digital payments now, the UPI railroads which have been built, right? The digital payment has been enabled through that. We see the consent being digitized now through the account aggregator layer, which means that your financial information would be made available based on your consent there, right? The third piece which is being built, right? And the fourth piece is essentially around digitizing credit and the networks like Okan, right, which is essentially working towards digitizing credit, right? And the fifth piece is essentially around digitizing the commerce, digitizing e-commerce, so to speak, right? And the platforms like ONDC being built around that, right? So the financial services players like us, and I'm saying, I'm not just restricting myself to banking here, the financial services players like us will have to essentially build on this digital infrastructure, right, that is being built, and offer products and services, and deliver it to them in the most efficient manner, not just to startups but also to consumers there, right, as we see it, right, and they ultimately going to be individuals and businesses both, right. So we if you see IDFC First Bank there, we position, we're the first movers on each of these items there that you see there, right. So that's about building financial services. That's about building products on top of it. But the traditional products may or may not actually work for the startups segment, because you need to understand their businesses first, right? And the traditional way of, and I'll give you one or two examples there. I had one example of offering credit to the startups, and we know startups, unlike traditional businesses, right, would not make profit for a long time, considering they invest in growth very aggressively, right? And if you were to build credit models based on profitability in years of existence, right, you would find it extremely difficult to build a lending program for the startups there. So you need essentially a lending program which takes into account how startups function, and based on that, you need to build a lending program around it, right? So these are the kind of pieces that you need to put in place. Again, I'll say credit cards, again, another product that the startups needs across life stages, right? The current account, so to speak, and the cash management services, the API integrations that they need, because most startups are tech-enabled startups. They need integrations really fast. You need your APIs to be ready and to be plugged in with a quicker turnaround time. So all these pieces that you need to build for the startups whole, and this is going to evolve. I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list of things that we're building or we built, right? We're saying that you need to evolve. You need to keep your eyes and ears open towards the need of the startups and build products and services around it, leveraging the infrastructure that you have, right? So that's what I have to say on that.
Great, Bhavesh. And just to follow on questions to this, on what legacy you'd like your organization to leave behind, for the startups.
Yeah, I think we are too early in our life stage, but I would say yes. So one thing that when we started off this particular unit, obviously, and my answer, obviously, as IDFC First Bank, we always put our customers first, right? And if you look at our products and services, wherever we got into new segments, we've always innovated, right? We come with an innovation mindset, and therefore we understand the space much better than anybody else, right? I would say in this space, and as to the businesses, so to speak, we want to be their preferred business partners. We want to be catalysts. We want to be seen as a springboard that the startups can potentially use for their growth in turn, right? And we don't want to restrict ourselves just to being a financial partner, so to speak. We want to go beyond that financial partners piece, right? And help startups succeed in their journey. And that effort, if we can increase their chances of success, would consider us as a really, really privileged partner there.
Great, thank you so much. So we have Arun here and we have Siddharth here, a startup as well as an investor. So Siddharth, we have seen so many investors saying that we are sector agnostic, and as an early stage startup, most of our audience right now are, early stage startups, maybe looking forward to raise their first check, but there are thousands of investors out there. And many of them say that we are sector agnostic. As a startup, applying to all the startups may not make sense. So as a startup, how do we do the research? How do we, identify the best investor, the best suited, whether I go for a sector specific or agnostic? What values should I look for? What stage? How do I research on this? Some tips around that would be really great for our audience.
I think, Tushar, VCs and investors do a fantastic job of marketing themselves. But I think the first and foremost thing an entrepreneur should actually end up doing is just look at the partners of the fund, go to the fund's website itself. Everyone's actually fairly public about the kind of investments they make, their investment thesis, what kind of companies what the sweet spots are when it comes to checks, etc. So the moment you go through the publicly available information, it actually narrows down the entire list of investors down to a handful itself. I think the second stage thereafter is not to directly approach the fund, but maybe approach some of the portfolio companies that the funds have actually invested in. Because the portfolio founders have actually worked with these particular funds, gone through the entire kind of investment, through due diligence, through negotiations, etc. So they have a very good pulse on how exactly the fund actually conducts itself. What's the gap between what the fund promotes versus the fund's actual practices when it comes to that, and helps them understand what value the funds actually do. Because at the end of the day, in investing especially, the inventory that you have is actually the same. It's actually capital. Whether you get it from the largest investor in the world or from your parents or something for that matter, that capital actually ends up being the same. But in early stage investing especially, investors are actually expected to go above and beyond just a call of capital. These people are actually expected to actually roll up their sleeves and actually start working with these companies itself. This is why looking at their portfolio and speaking to the founders actually gives you tremendous insights into how these funds end up operating, what their sweet spots are. Because at the early stage, you actually need someone who's a bit of a specialist, or actually has certain 4 or 5 focus areas. And those focus areas they've actually developed deep domain expertise in. So the moment you end up doing that, it actually goes far greater into detail on that particular matter, and make sure that the conversation that you have becomes far more enriching for both parties involved.
You, Arun, you have raised funds for your venture. Most of our audience right now would be at their early stages, looking forward to raise their first check. So, what did you do? What sort of research you did, and what sort of tips which you would like to give to the startups here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think tech innovation, etc., is 50% of the problem. The rest of it is you need the funds, you need the capability to take it to the market. So I think that's something as a founder that is a very important aspect to think of and plan. It's not like there are no funds out there for you, assuming you're working on a valuable enough problem and all right. But I think it's about how efficiently can you find the right fund to believe in you and sort of invest in you. As a founder, you only have so much energy and you have so much time. So I think like what Siddharth said, it's very important to understand, hey, what sort of capital do you need? Are you looking at equity? Are you looking at debt? What sort of check size are you looking at? What sort of funds are okay with this? Looking at their past investments really helps, because it sort of helps you build an understanding of what the fund believes in. So I think doing that research and being efficient about your time and pitching to the right investors, I think just amplifies your chance of finding the right investor. But all that comes second. I think the first step is just ensuring you're working on the right problem. And I think a lot of times the problem is right, but it needs some tinkering, right? So I think the ecosystem today is so healthy, where you have enough founders who are willing to come spend time. So I think it's very hard to not find another founder who's willing to sit down with you and sort of hear you out, understand what your problem is, what problem you're chasing, and also tweak it around, right? So I think that's something the founder must do. Is you're passionate about a problem, but I think it's important to remove emotions out of it and be objective about, are you solving a large enough problem? Is it valuable enough? Does it make money? Because that's what really investors care about, right? And they should, and that is important. You're not building a business for charity or for a purpose driven alone. It has to make money. So there are those things. So while keeping your original intent of solving the problem alive, there are always ways you can tweak to ensure that this is a far better business. And I think that's something that happens with enough feedback from investors and other founders. So I think founders should be just be open to hearing feedback. And I think when if you do not, enough investors are going to not believe in your idea, just don't take that personally. It's not like they don't like you. They just don't believe in what you're doing. And that's okay, as long as your belief in it continues to be strong. But use the same opportunity to understand why they don't believe in it. Maybe you don't agree with it, but maybe there's a nugget of truth for you to learn from and improve upon.
Great, thank you so much. And so the time is short, but there's so many things which I would want to ask, to this wonderful panel out here, on this National Startup Day for the Leap to Unicorn program, where all the early stage startups out here are looking forward to create their respective unicorns in the coming years. And so just a closing remark, maybe one or two words. If all of you all can please answer this question in a couple of words, wherein what do you think could be the game changing? I think we already discussed a lot of it, but just to summarize it for the audience in a couple of words, the game changing factors in the coming years, maybe if you can point out in a couple of words which can impact the Indian startup ecosystem in the coming years. Maybe we can start with Ramanan sir, maybe in the same sequence.
I think the game-changing factors are all contained in that word startup. I think the S stands for a solution that is unique and that has not been solved before, or that has been solved suboptimally. The T in the startup stands for leveraging technology, as going to be a game-changing factor for them if they leverage it properly. The A stands for agility. Be very agile, because you are living in a highly competitive world. And if you're not, then you're going to find some other guy catching up with you. The R stands for re-engineering. You won't get it right the first time, but how do you re-engineer? How do you reiterate? You have an iPhone success story, which is very clearly one of re-engineering, reiteration, and reproducing a new innovation for the rest of the world. The U stands for uniqueness. Be unique in your approach. It's not just the solution alone, but also your marketing, your investment approach, and all of that stuff. And finally, the P stands for passion. Don't let any failure deter you. The word fail is just first attempt in learning. And as long as you have that passion and persistence, I think all the answers are there in the word startup.
Wonderful, sir. Great. I mean, a very different perspective to look at a startup now for all of us. Same question goes to you, Siddharth. A couple of words to mention that how it can be a game-changing factor. I think there's some audio issue here, so we'll pass on the question to Arun now.
Yeah, no, I think build real tech, design real tech in India, for the world, and I think just keep building. I think that's about it. Keep it short.
Great, Arun. Bhavesh, closing remarks from your end.
Do you want to go back to Siddharth and see if that works once before?
Sure. Siddharth.
I think
we can
mute. We can hear you.
I think still there's some audio issue, so maybe we can go with you, Bhavesh.
Sure. So I guess Mr. Ramanan have kind of captured it beautifully, right? I never thought the startup, or rather start, could be explained the way he did, right? And thank you, sir, for that knowledge to us. That's a takeaway for all of us here in this panel, I guess, right? And I would say from my side, if I were to add something, right, and that goes towards innovation, any kind of innovation, any kind of problem solving that you're doing, the first principles thinking, right? And that's where you need to go back to every time that when you're trying to solve a problem and see why does this problem exist in the first place, right? So what's the need that you're trying to address? So I guess that'll be from my end.
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for all the audience, for all the panel members, and startups. If you have not yet applied for Leap to Unicorn yet, I mean, this is your opportunity. It's National Startup Day, and it's a great opportunity for all of you all to go check out about Leap to Unicorn program. Get an opportunity to raise your funds, to get mentored from unicorn founders, to get so many experts, so many enablers out here to help you grow your venture and become the next unicorn. So yeah, with these remarks, I would like to end the session and thank all the wonderful panel members out here. Thank you, IDFC First Bank, Moneycontrol.com, CNBC TV 18 for being a wonderful partner, and thanks to the awesome people at Head Start Network Foundation for facilitating this. Thank you so much, everyone.
Leap to Unicorn with IDFC First Bank in association with Moneycontrol and CNBC TV 18.